Wonderful. Well, I'm going to do everything I can to answer as many of your questions as I can. So, maybe it's not going to change. Ah, there we go. Okay. So, again, my name is Tracey Lawrence, and my parents, Roz and Herb, are my why. This is why I do this. Okay? I love that picture of them from 1983. Okay? Because they were about my age then. And they were having a ball. Okay? And it's hard to see it on the projection, but my father's ever-present friend is Tarrington's. Okay? He's got the cigarette in one hand, he's got the lighter in the other hand, he's ready for the next one. This was a year before he had coronary bypass surgery at the age of 56. And after the bypass surgery, it was a great success, and my father saw an opportunity to have a second chance. And so he and my mom went into steady retirement, and they really started having fun. So, and I was really happy for them because they had a long, a long interval where things were maybe not so easy, and they had a great time. They had a house in Barnegat, and then they had an apartment in Florida. They were snowbirding. They were going back and forth, and everything seemed to be great until 2003. I used to talk to my dad on the phone all the time, and when I spoke to him on the phone, he sounded great. Everything was fine, everything was wonderful, and then I saw him. And it was a little shocking because he was clearly not doing so good. He was having trouble getting around. Everything hurt him. He was weak. And then he had a procedure which landed him in the hospital, after which he could not remember anything. As soon as a thought would come to him, it would disappear. He couldn't remember why he was in the hospital. And it turned out that my father had vascular dementia. Vascular dementia is a type of dementia that it occurs because of coronary artery disease. Okay? So the same kind of condition that caused the blockage in his heart was now causing blockage in the capillaries in his brain, and was causing little strokes. And so he was having different symptoms all the time. Every time he'd have a stroke, something else would change. Okay? Now, he was misdiagnosed a bunch of times by people who were supposed to be smarter than me. And by the way, I'm not a doctor. Okay? So just so you know, I'm not trying to give you medical advice. Okay? I'm giving you my perspective as someone who's been through this with people they love. Okay? So he was first misdiagnosed with something called Pick's disease, because the neurologist, who was a family friend, saw the CAT scan of my father's brain, and he detected that there was shrinkage in his frontal lobes. And that is a hallmark of Pick's disease, among other dementias. There are several. But my father did not have Pick's disease. One of the hallmarks of Pick's disease is lewd behavior, and my father did not exhibit any of that. He also put him on a very powerful antipsychotic, which knocked him for a loop. And by going to other doctors, I got him off those medications and helped to increase his quality of life while he was around. Okay? So, so my dad, he got sick in 03, and by 04 he was gone. All right? My mom, Rosalind, this was us together in 2002 in their apartment in Florida. My mom actually came to live with my husband and me in 2009 because she needed to have a gallbladder operation, and she was terrified that she might have to have conventional surgery. Her doctor in Florida had suggested that. And I said, that's not going to happen on my watch. And I brought her to stay with us, and I got her surgery done laparoscopically. And in a week, she was much, much better, and she was campaigning to go back to Florida. So I said, you know what? And at that point, I knew that things were starting to go south for her cognitively. I was observing some things that made it clear that she really shouldn't be by herself anymore. So I said, okay, Mom, here's the deal. I'll take you back to Florida, but I'm going to hire someone to be with you in Florida. 5 days a week. It doesn't have to be every day. I want somebody to help you take care of yourself. I want somebody who can help you with the shopping and getting around because she didn't drive. You know, and just be there for you. And she said, I don't need no stinking babysitter. Now, at the time, you know, I didn't know this, but you know what? That's a really common response. And I said, you know what, Mom? You're right. You don't need a babysitter. But what you do need is a proxy for me. Someone who can do all the things for you that I do, but can't do because I live in New Jersey and you live in Florida. So I need someone who can be my surrogate for you. Someone who can extend your ability to be independent. All right? Remember that phrase. Okay? So that you can continue to live independently in Florida longer. Okay? She agreed, and for a month she was just as happy as a clam. Okay? Because the caregiver we found for her was lovely. And she liked her. And she took her places. She took her to the movies. She took her to dances. She helped her with shopping. They were having a ball. Unfortunately, this gal could not afford to live on the salary that she was making as a caregiver and found a full-time job. So when I proposed finding another caregiver for my mom, she started arguing with me. And in time, I finally got tired of arguing and trying to caregive her long distance and brought her to live with my husband and me permanently, or at least at that time. So she came to live with us in 2010. She had a psychotic break in December 2010. And eventually she couldn't live with us any longer. I have hardwood floors throughout my home. She was falling. I was afraid she was going to seriously hurt herself. And I was bringing in caregivers into my home to help her, a service like Mary Ann's, to help make sure that she was safe and engaged and being cared for during the day while I was trying to work. But eventually that wasn't working out very well any longer, and we made the decision for her to go to a home. And at that point she was ready, because she'd been resisting it for a long time. And as her condition changed, the place that she lived in had to change also. Initially she was in an independent living facility, and she suffered a urinary tract infection, which made her psychotic and violent. Okay? And this is a big problem. This happens a lot in dementia. As the brain changes, people who develop dementia can become violent. This is a big problem. And urinary tract infections, folks, in the elderly can be catastrophic. They can kill the person, or make them psychotic, or bring certain syndromes that are very difficult to treat. So my mom had chronic UTIs for the rest of her life. And I had issues with finding the right place for Mom during the rest of her life. But fortunately, I found a really great facility that was appropriate for memory care, which helped to deal with her behaviors without whacking her with drugs. And that's a really, it's a tough balance, because a lot of places, unfortunately, they treat with drugs and they keep the people very ridiculously calm. Okay, so in my mom's case, I always wanted her to be dealt with lovingly and kindly, and I succeeded in that. Okay, so what you need to know is, and you may have heard this before, but every day in the United States, 10,000 people are turning 65. Wow. And change is inevitable, and as we get older, the longer we live, the chances that we're going to live long enough to develop dementia are higher, okay? And who takes care of us, okay? Now, the thing you need to understand is that, we all think, until you get there, you think Medicare is going to take care of it. I'm here to tell you that Medicare will take care of you medically, okay? But when it comes to dementia, when it comes to the kinds of things we need when we develop dementia, we need help with activities of daily living. Okay? That's things like getting dressed, getting to the bathroom, getting around, getting to appointments. Those kinds of things, Medicare does not pay for. It's called custodial. Okay? It's the kind of things that you're doing for your wife right now. Okay? And that's the kind of thing that we need to be aware of, because as we age, even if we don't develop dementia, we do need some help. So we need to understand, number one, what kind of help we might need, and number two, where it's going to come from, number three, who's going to pay for it. Okay? And when I say pay for it, it could be money, it could be, do we pay for it with our lives? I know caregivers who've died because 50% of family caregivers of loved ones with dementia die before the people they're taking care of. Think about that. Okay? In all good conscience, we're trying to keep that loved one from going into a home, which is lovely and noble. But if it's killing us, what do we serve? Okay? We get such tunnel vision about caregiving the people we care about that we stop taking care of ourselves. And that's a huge problem with caregivers. Okay? All right. Now, this is from an article that Fortune magazine published. Can Biogen beat the memory thief? And this is one of the many cures that's being cultivated by the pharmaceuticals industry. But what I wanted to point out from this article that I thought was striking is that currently Alzheimer's, and understand, Alzheimer's is one type of dementia. Okay? Dementia is an overarching term that describes all kinds of cognitive decline. Alzheimer's is the best known type of dementia. 5.3 million Americans are currently afflicted. That they know about. And that's just Alzheimer's. Okay? That number is expected to balloon by some 8 million by 2025. What's going to happen to all these people? Okay? And the cost of caring for patients, much of which is shouldered by Medicare and Medicaid, and I'll get to that in a minute, was $214 billion in 2014. What a number. Okay? And we're just getting started, folks. This is coming. So, now, when people think of dementia, before my father got dementia, you think of it as being forgetful, it's something we joke about. Oh, it's great when you have dementia, there are no reruns. Okay? It's shocking what dementia does to people. The violence thing was like just a total shock to me. My father didn't go through that, but my mom, the most demure little lady you can imagine, was hauled off to the emergency room at Chilton for threatening people with butter knives. Now, so she was paranoid. People were going to do stuff to her. Why? Well, because there's a lot of fear. Okay? And you got to put yourself in the position of the person involved. Cognitive decline doesn't necessarily mean dementia, but too often it does. And as it occurs, everything that they've counted on all their lives is now slipping away. They fear losing their independence. They have fear of death. They have fear of being a burden, and that's a huge one. So, of course, you don't want to tell your kids you think something's happening to you because they're scared they're going to have to do something. All right? There's resentment. Once it starts happening, you resent people who aren't in your position. You deny. Okay, that's a big one. And it's not just the afflicted, but the families that are really big on denial. It's a very powerful human defense mechanism. If you say it's not happening, you don't have to deal with it. But you do. Anger is big, and anxiety is also big. Think about it. You just put your keys, you just saw them 5 minutes ago, and then the next time you look for them, they're gone. That can be very anxiety-provoking. And that's something we don't think about. The ramifications of memory loss, okay, are very complex and very profound. So, the things that we have to think about as we deal with people with dementia, you know, the afflicted really try hard to hide their problems. They try to cover. You know, does anybody here know somebody with dementia? Okay. You may go to visit them and they kind of recognize you, but maybe they don't know exactly who you are. But they'll smile and they'll say, "How are you? I haven't seen you in so long." They don't really remember. So they come up with ways of covering. So sometimes it's really hard to tell what's going on. And you know, when it comes to the parent-child dynamic, parents are usually going to try to minimize the problem. "Oh, you know me, I'm just being forgetful, but you know, I'm fine." And the other thing that we have to remember is that aging adults are not like children. I've heard people say, "Oh, people with dementia are like little kids." Well, you know, I can see why they say that, but they're not. The most powerful example I heard of recently, a gentleman I spoke to who lived in Boston had his dad living in California. And his dad was no longer capable of driving safely. So the kids took the car away from him and sold it. However, he still had all of his stuff in place, so he went out and he bought another car. Okay? This is the thing we gotta think about, because you may solve the problem one minute, but this is still an adult with credit. Okay? And the disease, because the disease isn't linear, because you have good days and bad days, on a good day, they may go car shopping. Okay? So you really have to take steps beyond just getting rid of the obvious. You have to think a few steps ahead. You've got to be ready to play chess. You got to think about what could they possibly do before they do. Family dynamics have a huge impact on the ability to deal with the problems at hand. If there are a lot of kids, there can be some real serious issues. And this is a big reason why I advocate for families to have conversations while everyone's still well. Okay? Which is a hard thing to do because nobody wants to deal with stuff when people are well, right? But that's the best time to deal with it. Because you can make rational decisions, right? You can talk about things, the what-ifs, from a safe emotional distance, all right? So it's really important to start thinking of these things while everyone is still healthy. Because once things start happening, then family dynamics can really kick in, and the next thing you know, two rational adults who are having a pretty decent relationship are having fights that they used to have when they were 3 and 6. You know, so it's really important to try to get a handle on that and know that family dynamics can play a major role. Also, if adult children try to have a conversation with a parent, the parents can very often become defensive and, "Hey, you're my kid. Why are you talking to me about this?" And sometimes you need to bring another grown-up into the room to diffuse that dynamic. Okay? Because, and I do this for people. I will actually go and talk to the mom, to the aging parents with the adult kids and have a conversation. Because I'm not their kid. Right? So they're gonna have a different conversation with me than they're gonna have with their own children. So, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to hire me, you can go to a clergy person, you can go to someone, a member of your community who the people in question respect. Have a conversation with them, get them on your side. Come on in. Yes, I'm going to have this. And have that conversation so that the family dynamic is diffused. Okay? That can help to move the conversation forward in a really powerful way. And as the change isn't linear. Okay? People with dementia have good days and bad days. They can rally. There are days when they seem perfectly normal, and then the next day they can't remember how to tie their shoes anymore. So it's a very frustrating process. Particularly for the family and the caregivers, because you just don't know what to expect. But that's normal. Okay. And you know, when you start to impose new rules on people, You know, there's a clash because of the family dynamics. And, you know, adult children will very often back down out of habit. You know, when you have a respectful relationship with your parents, and then you're trying to help them, and then the parents are like, no, you're not doing that. The kids will back down. Oh, well, at least I tried. But, you know, the children, you have to persevere, because this could be life or death. Especially when you're talking about things like driving a car when you shouldn't be driving. Okay? That people's lives are at stake. So it's extremely important not to back down. Okay? And there are resources that you can use to help you to get past that. Okay. Now, a lot of people ask me, do you think I have dementia? Should I be worried? How do I know? Is it just normal aging? Or could this be dementia? And the way I've come up with to kind of make you feel a little better, if you have normal aging, then you might not remember what you had for lunch. But if you've got dementia, you can't remember that you had lunch. See the difference? Does that help? Yes? No? Okay. All right, so in trying to decide whether or not somebody's got dementia, here are some behaviors to watch for. Asking the same question repeatedly. That's a big one. All right. Misunderstanding simple questions. Mom, did you eat the soup? No, I dropped the soap. Well, now it could be a hearing loss. And very often, hearing loss is mistaken for dementia. Bear in mind that you're going to have both. Someone's trying to get it. Okay. You could have, but sometimes they happen at the same time. All right. And there's been a relationship found between hearing loss and dementia. So, but they don't always coexist. So more testing is required. My father-in-law had profound hearing loss. He was in the hospital, didn't have his hearing aids in, and they immediately classified him as having dementia. Until my sister-in-law walked in and said, do you know that he's profoundly deaf? They put his hearing aids in and suddenly he could answer their questions. Woo-hoo, right? So you have to ask the right questions. Okay. Okay, repetition. Telling the same stories over and over again. Not remembering that they had already reported that. Misplacing items, it's huge. Happens a lot. Paranoia. Because you're misplacing so many things, very often you think people are stealing from you or lying to you. Okay? So that business of being paranoid, of thinking that others are doing this to me. Every once in a while my mom would say, you're gaslighting me? You know? No, Mom. You know, stop playing tricks on me. I'm not playing tricks on you, Mom. Mother Nature is, I'm really sorry. Wandering. That's another big one. A lot of times when people are first developing dementia, they will be walking a path they've walked for years and suddenly they can't remember how to get home. All right? If that starts happening, you're going to want to schedule an appointment with the doctor ASAP. Agitation, that's another big one. Getting revved up and just like being like really irritated, like for no apparent reason. Forgetting how to do simple things. Disruption in sleep patterns. If someone has always been someone who goes to bed, for the last several years just goes to bed early, wakes up early, that's a usual pattern. But if they're up in the middle of the night and they're roaming the halls, and then chances are good there's something going on there. You're going to want to get that checked out. And poor balance and unsteady gait. Okay? And one of the biggest reasons why people with dementia wind up in the hospital is that they fall down and they hurt themselves. So, so you really want to be on the lookout for that. That can be a really telltale sign. Okay. So is it Alzheimer's, dementia, or what? Okay, these are all types of dementia. So we all know about Alzheimer's disease. The Alzheimer's Association does a fabulous job of getting the word out. And they also have wonderful resources. So if you want to learn more about dementia, not just Alzheimer's, but dementia in general, they're a great resource. Then there's Lewy body dementia. It's a different kind. And it's usually, it has a relationship with Parkinson's disease. It tends to affect the neurological functionality. Also, people with Lewy body tend not to develop the short-term memory loss that is a classic hallmark of Alzheimer's. My mom had that. So my mom would actually remember like what just happened. The problem with my mom was that her long-term memory had been replaced with a total fantasy. She had developed people in her life I never did. Okay, and for a very long time I was her sister Sylvia, not her daughter. So it's a different kind of dementia. Vascular dementia we talked about. That's what my dad had. Hicks disease, what my dad didn't have. Frontal temporal dementia, this is like yet another type. It has to do with shrinking of the frontal temporal lobes. And sufferers can have more than one. Now here's some things that make dementia even more evil. For one thing, it's very difficult to classify exactly what type of dementia a person has until they die. So what do we do while they're alive? It's a problem. So what you should do is get a physical assessment. All right, that's number one. If you have any suspicion at all that you or a loved one may be developing memory loss, go to the doctor. Okay? It's better to know. Because what they can do is, first of all, they can rule out physical issues. Because physical issues can cause memory loss. Okay? UTI, number one. Okay? Urinary tract infections, which are relatively benign in younger people, can be catastrophic to the elderly. All right? So you really, rule it out. Most of them are curable. All right? And there are things you can do like drinking cranberry juice to help minimize the impact. And bless you. There's also over-medication can be a big problem. Because as we go through our lives, the needs for the medications we've been on for a long time can change. After my mom's gallbladder was removed, she lost a lot of weight because she could no longer eat as much as she was eating. And all of a sudden, she was so fatigued, she could hardly get out of bed. And I took her to the doctor, and they were like, oh, she seems okay. I was like, no, she's not okay. And finally, I got a doctor to listen to me, and they took her blood pressure, and it was like 30/60. It's like, her blood's barely getting through her circulatory system, please. Well, she didn't need to be on high blood pressure medication any longer, because she lost weight. She didn't need to be on so many diabetes drugs, because her blood sugar dropped. She lost the weight. So you really need to monitor medications. They can cause really big problems if they are not monitored, and the dosages need to be looked at periodically. You can't just keep going on taking the same thing because things change. Okay. You want to document all the doctor's procedures and medications. This is really important. A lot of us don't do this until we absolutely have to. It's a lot easier to do it while it's going on. So start keeping track. Because in life, we will have, as you go through life, you will have many, 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 many doctors. If you try to think of how many doctors you have right now, you probably say like, oh, I got like 4 or 5. But then when you really start to think about it, oh, right, there's the chiropractor. Oh, yeah, there's the orthodontist. Oh, yeah, there's whatever. There are so many practitioners we deal with over the course of our lives. Make a note of it. Journal it. Enter it where you can get to it, especially where your loved ones are concerned. Because that way, developing a history that will be useful later when your loved one can't speak for themselves. It's important. Neurological assessment. This is really big. And you want to try to do this while you're still pretty healthy. Why? Because you want to establish a baseline. What's normal? Okay? All of the diagnostic tools currently available, as I said before, they can only tell for sure what kind of dementia you have with an autopsy. This does us no good while we're alive, okay? But what they can do is to studies relative to a baseline. So if you go to the doctor and you say, okay, let's do an assessment now while I'm healthy. So if things start to happen, they have something to compare it to later, right? So, you know, you're here now, okay? Then you might come back in a year and say, you know, doc, I'm getting really forgetful, and he gives you a neurological assessment, and maybe you're here, right? So if you set a benchmark, it's a lot easier to evaluate you down the line if we've done the testing ahead of time. So it's a good idea to always start earlier, okay? And also, you know, if there's some kind of indication that something's going on, you might be able to take some action. Some simple lifestyle changes can help a lot. Changes in diet can help a lot. But you won't know unless you start to seek some help and advice from a qualified practitioner. Everyone should have an elder attorney. I don't care how old you are. Get an elder attorney. Very important. Why? Because we all have stuff. We've all worked for stuff. We all have places where we live. We have things that we value. And we assume that as we age, those things will just pass to our heirs. Well, guess what? If you don't put it in writing in the right way, then you could very easily pass away and have your stuff go to somebody you don't want it to go to. Okay? By doing that ahead of time, you have more control over your life and your legacy. There is also the possibility that as we age and things happen, Medicaid is in a lot of our futures. This is sad to say, but unfortunately in the current climate, it's true. The #1 provider of long-term care funding in this country is Medicaid. All right? So it doesn't matter how well off you are. Generally, when somebody gets dementia in today's society, they will probably plow through $500,000 very easily. So if you have $500,000 and you're thinking, oh, well, I'm fine. Well, if you do develop dementia, the odds are you're going to plow through it. And in addition, you may actually be plowing through some other assets that may belong to your other family members. Something that we would never want to do because we don't want to be a burden, right? So it's really important to seek the counsel of an elder attorney and get your ducks in a row. Make sure that you have a will. You want to assign a power of attorney. Power of attorney is what you get to say, this is the person I want to speak for me if I can't speak for myself for my financial matters. Healthcare proxy. This is the person who I want to speak for me in the event that I can't speak for myself for health matters. Okay? And you also want advance directives. You want to spell out what you would have happen, what you would prefer to have happen, in the event that certain things happen to you. You don't want to put the pressure on your family to make these decisions for you. It's very important to put it in writing before anything happens. And that way everybody knows, and everybody can proceed in your best interest and do things the way you want them to be done. Okay? Do seek the support of family, friends, and associations. There are a lot of resources out there. And if you have questions about resources, you can contact me. I can connect you to people who can help you. You also want to assess the safety of the loved one's environment. This is really important. A lot of people want to stay in their homes. Well, that's fine. But the home that you lived in when you were in your 30s and 40s, when you could fly up and down the stairs without a problem, may not be appropriate for you when you're in your 80s, 90s, and you got a walker, right? So there are things that you might want to do to make the home more accessible and safe for loved ones as time goes on. It's something to think about. There are professionals who can help you with those kinds of assessments. Okay, treatment options. With the earlier something is diagnosed, the more options you have, okay? There's been a great deal of progress in determining which lifestyle choices we make can have an impact on cognition. Okay? If we're in better physical shape, our heads work better. Okay? And this is true of people who have dementia too. Okay? If they're in social settings, they do better. If they're getting exercise, they do better. If they're getting certain healthier foods, they do better. So by getting an earlier diagnosis, you have more options and you increase the likelihood that you will live long enough to perhaps enjoy a cure that's on the horizon. Can't happen fast enough as far as I'm concerned, but there you go. And a lot of the medications, right now, you got to know, there is no cure. Okay? Right? Nobody has a cure for dementia that I know of. However, and I think I know about it because I follow the press pretty carefully when it comes to that stuff. But there are things that help, and there are medications that supposedly slow down the progress of the disease. So by identifying it earlier, you can enhance the quality of your life by slowing down the progress of the disease. So that's important. So being physically fit, okay, is a big help. But anything you can do to increase blood flow to different areas of your body, it increases the restoration of cells and helps your brain to function better. So physical fitness is key. Environmental adjustments. You want to make a person's environment as conducive to good living as you can. You don't want to put people in a position where they have to exert themselves unnecessarily or endanger themselves. And I encourage people to build a team, okay? Because dementia, it ain't just a doctor, okay? You're going to need a doctor, psychiatrist, neurologist, social worker, geriatric care manager, and dementia specialist. And that's the tip of the iceberg. Okay. And of course, as I said, medications are limited and they presently offer no cure. Okay. So before you step in, you really want to be prepared. You don't want to try and just like flub the conversation. You really want to think carefully about it, because if you approach it the wrong way, then you get opposition and pushback, and the next thing you know, there's no longer any room for conversation. You do want to try and gain the support of siblings and other family members if at all possible. And if you have also, as I mentioned before, someone from your community, a friend, a neighbor, a clergy person, someone who the family respects, it's a good idea to bring those people in. Clue them into what's going on so you can call them in when the family dynamics start to go a little haywire. You want to have an agenda, all right? Keep it short. Figure out what the most important things you want to cover are, and if you need ideas for that, I have a free ebook that I can send you that outlines the 8 things you need to talk about. There are 8, okay? And you can pick from the first like 5 just to get the conversation started. And be ready to step away, because if you start getting pushback, let it sit. You don't want to keep coming back at somebody who's upset. Right? But you can make incremental progress. Once you plant the seed, right, then you can come back around and see if they, very often, once you've had the conversation with a loved one, they'll come back to you and say, when they're calmer, I thought about what you said, and maybe we should talk. Maybe we should do this. So, it's always best to just kind of let it sit for a while. Let that little seed germinate, and you may actually make some progress. I know that worked with me and my mom. You do want to seek help, okay? Don't try to handle it alone, because there are times when this can feel extremely overwhelming. And because you're talking about usually a loved one, someone you care a lot about, someone you've always been able to go to, and now something's happening. You want allies, you want help, you want somebody who can help you be strong. And that another grown-up in the room diffuses pushback. This is just, it's so important. You really, if you can bring in somebody else who's got the respect of the people you're trying to impress, then I encourage you to do that. So, I thank you all for being here. My company is Grand Family Planning. I help families to understand the kinds of things that they need to do to prepare for these kinds of situations. You're welcome to call me, email me, visit my website. There are lots of resources. I have brochures on the back table as well as business cards. I hope that you will sign the sign-up sheet if you haven't already. As I said, this will be on YouTube. And we have a little bit of time left. Do you guys have questions?
Why do some people get dementia and then others don't?
That's a great question. God knows.
And I've also heard several people, and my sister is a nurse, so she's made comments about this too. If you're over 70 years of age and you go in for surgery and you have anesthesia, there is a strong chance that you come out with dementia.
Yeah. And it could be temporary. In my father's case, it wasn't. He had, my father had an open lung biopsy, and he bled out internally, and went to the hospital, and that's when his dementia came in full blown. And the body, as we age, our bodies become more vulnerable to a lot of things. So anything that has a large impact to our system can impact cognition. So things like, let's seem benign, or any kind of infection, a cold can really knock a person back and can develop into something worse, like pneumonia. So as we age, we are much more vulnerable to things that were previously benign because our systems are weaker. And why some people get dementia and others don't? There have been studies. There was a great dementia study on nuns. And these nuns volunteered to be studied. And there were two nuns in particular, one that developed very clear signs of dementia while she was alive, and the other who didn't. And when they did the surgery at autopsy, they both had clear signs of Alzheimer's disease. The nurse who didn't show any signs of dementia was a teacher, and she kept socially engaged to the end of her life. And they call that cognitive reserve. By staying engaged, by staying active, she was able to have the physical manifestation of Alzheimer's without ever exhibiting signs of dementia. So dementia is a very insidious, tricky disease because as human beings, we are so complex. There's so much more to us than anybody can quantify. So that's why some people get dementia and those don't. I hope that answers your question.
One other question, is it hereditary?
Yes and no. They have found that the probability that you will get dementia is impacted by certain genetic determinants. They have found there's an enzyme in Alzheimer's called APOE4, which increases the likelihood that you will develop dementia. I actually participated in a study where I was genetically tested because I have two parents with dementia, and I don't have that amino acid. So I'm okay. But does that mean I won't get dementia? I don't know. My mom's mom had dementia. We don't know what kind because in those days they weren't diagnosing it. My mother's older sister had Alzheimer's. My mother most likely had Lewy body dementia. I will know, though, in about a year, because I donated her brain to science, and Mount Sinai will give me the pathology report once they've done their study on her. Because I felt very strongly that, number one, if I can do something to help science with the tragedy that's befallen my mom, I want to do that. And also, I want my family to know what kind of dementia specifically she had, because there may be a genetic role that is in play. And I have nephews. Yes?
Is there any value to knowing before they die what kind they have?
Yeah, because treatments, yes, great question. Because there are different treatments available for different kinds of dementia. And they can treat them differently. Because
what sort of exams should one ask for?
You want to start with a CAT scan. First you talk to your doctor, and you want to get a cognition test. okay, which is usually, it's an inventory, you know, they're questions.
But it's on a computer, right?
No. It's an interview, and you find out like what kind of, you know, like they ask you like basic questions: who's the president, what year is it, that kind of stuff. They'll ask you to draw basic geometrical shapes. They ask you to write a sentence, things of that nature. And you know, very often the speech centers are affected in dementia. So so the kinds of treatments vary depending on what kind of dementia you have. Vascular dementia is coronary artery disease, so blood thinners may help. You know, so it really does depend on what kind of dementia you have, and it's good to know what kind it is, if they can narrow it down. Any other questions?
Yes, you can mention how healthy of a diet it would be involved. I heard that sometimes taking particular specific vitamins is helpful in some way.
Yeah, there have been some studies on vitamins, and vitamin D seems to play a role. Vitamin D deficiency can play a part. And then there are...
Are these anecdotal, or have they been clinically...
No, there are all kinds of studies. There are all kinds of studies, and there seems to be an indication that vitamin D deficiency can contribute to dementia. Then there's a correlation between diabetes and dementia. There's a doctor, Mark Harmon, who refers to dementia as type 3 diabetes because there's an inability to process insulin. And they've done studies where patients have inhaled insulin and their cognition improves. Then there have been studies that show that organic coconut oil is beneficial to cognition. And in some patients has reversed cognitive issues. So get yourself a little organic coconut oil. It sure can't hurt you. I know I have some at least once a week. What the hell? What could it hurt, right? So yeah, so there are a lot of studies being done. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot to suggest that a plant-based diet is very helpful. Staying away from processed foods. You know, anything that improves your ability to take care of your body. Because the thing is, we don't realize in our society, food is medicine. Okay? It's the top medicine we take. We are taking food every day, and it's medicine. It has a direct impact on our well-being. So by having good food and avoiding GMOs and processed foods, you enhance your ability to repair your body and avoid the degeneration that happens in the brain that leads to dementia. Yes?
Incidentally, how do you take the coconut oil?
Me personally, it gets solid in the jar, so you can just take it out, put it in a pan, and fry stuff in it. Okay. I make pina colada French toast. I'll take pineapple and fry it, and then like put the French toast in there, and delicious.
I've already made steak with coconut oil. My wife really loves it with coconut oil, but I've heard of people taking it as a supplement, and I'm wondering, how do you do it? I mean, fried, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are all kinds of ways of doing it. You can, like, you know, mix it in a smoothie, I guess. You know, and use it any way that you would use fat. You know, and if you like the taste of coconut, you know, there are lots of ways. You know.
Another question, you mentioned anything that helps our blood circulate. And I've known people who, as far as exercising, do a passive exercise in their head. And they do that to stretch their limbs. You know, it's a stretch, it's a passive stretch, but the blood goes to your head. Does that have any value?
You know what? Anything that gets blood to your brain is a good thing. Yeah, I'm a yoga practitioner myself, and you know, one of the things about yoga is that, you know, that certain poses reverse the effects of gravity, and anytime you're getting blood to circulate in parts of the body it doesn't ordinarily circulate to, it's certainly a good thing.
Well,
will it keep you from getting dementia? I don't know, but it certainly can't hurt.
If it counters gravity and wrinkles and getting old, I like the idea.
Yeah, you know, it's like I don't have a problem with wrinkles because I think of I think of wrinkles as a sign that you've used your body well, especially laugh lines. You know, so it means you've had something to laugh about. So that's a good
question that I would have. One of the things that attracted me to coming here is that I was told it's normal aging. I forget words occasionally. I'm in conversation, and the perfect word is in the back of my mind, but it never comes out of my mouth. I have to use a substitute for the most efficient conversational piece of furniture. And I also can be reading something and then forget what I read, and you'll come back to me a little bit later.
That's just total normal aging. I think of the brain as being like a hard drive, and the longer we live, the more filled up with data it is. So, you know, when you're a kid, you got nothing to remember, right? You know, you're 5 years old, you know, I gotta remember to go watch my cartoon. But, you know, as you get older, you have a lot of stuff to remember, right? So it all like piles up. And sometimes you can't sort through it fast enough. But that's not dementia. That's normal aging. That's just having a lot on your mind. So please don't, I wouldn't worry about it. But what I would do is I'd go to my doctor and I'd say, do me a favor, give me a cognitive test now so we can establish a baseline.
Yeah, I've already done that. And
good.
My doctor says, yeah, it's a memory block. I have the same problem. So
all right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope this
Grand Family Planning, your unique family support system.